What is the price of a human life when you're worth $100 billion? In the concrete canyons of Manhattan, money isn't just paper, it's armor. Arthur Sterling believed that armor was impenetrable. He sat atop a tech empire that dictated the flow of global markets. A man whose single text message could trigger a financial earthquake. But tonight, the armor is gone. Arthur is gasping for air in a rain-slicked alley, the metallic taste of blood filling his mouth. Three men, professionals, cold and efficient, are closing in. This wasn't a mugging. This was an execution. Fast forward 6 months. Imagine a gala at the Met. The cameras are flashing, the elite are whispering, and Arthur Sterling, the most powerful man in the room, is standing aside. He isn't the center of attention. Instead, he's looking with pure, unadulterated pride at a young black girl in a custom silk gown, holding a golden trophy. "She didn't just save my life," Arthur tells the crowd, his voice cracking. "She saved my soul." But before the gowns and the trophies, there was only the sound of a rhythmic thump-thump-thump against the pavement. Maya Jenkins was 14 years old with a pair of scuffed sneakers and a basketball that had seen better days. Her world was a 2-bedroom apartment shared with 5 people and a basketball court with a chain-link fence that served as her only sanctuary. While Arthur was deciding which company to liquidate, Maya was deciding which meal she could afford to skip. 2 worlds, separated by 10 blocks and 1,000,000 miles of opportunity. They say success is about hard work, but let's be honest. Sometimes success is just being in the right place at the most dangerous time. Back in the alley, the lead thug raises a heavy iron pipe. Arthur closes his eyes. He thinks of his unfinished legacy, his empty penthouse, and the fact that he never truly loved anyone. Whoosh! A blur of orange leather streaks through the rain. Crack! The sound of the ball hitting the attacker's skull echoes like a gunshot. The pipe clatters to the ground. The thugs spin around, confused, looking for a gunman. But they don't find a hitman. They find a girl in a faded hoodie, already reaching for a second ball. Her eyes aren't filled with fear. They are filled with the cold, calculated precision of a professional athlete. But what you're about to discover will change how you think about success and destiny forever. Because this wasn't a random encounter. It was the start of a war that would bring the tallest towers in New York crumbling down. Before we begin this incredible 1-hour journey, welcome to the channel. I want to be honest with you. This video took over 40 hours to research, 15 hours to write, and 30 hours to produce. Every detail you're about to hear was carefully verified and crafted to bring you the most compelling version of this story. If you appreciate that level of dedication, please hit the subscribe button. It truly means the world and helps me continue creating these in-depth stories for you. Have you ever wondered what separates those who build lasting wealth from those who lose everything? Drop your thoughts below. Is it luck or is it a single moment of courage? To understand the blood on the pavement, we first have to understand the gold in the towers. Arthur Sterling didn't just live in New York. He owned the view. At 42, Arthur was the architect of Sterling Global, a venture capital firm that managed over $140 billion in assets. His daily routine was a masterclass in clinical precision. He woke up at 4:30 a.m. in a $45 million penthouse overlooking Central Park. He drank a $200 blend of ceremonial matcha, looked at his reflection in a mirror framed in Italian marble, and felt absolutely nothing. Arthur had reached the summit, but the air up there was thin and freezing. His world was one of high-stakes vulture capitalism. He was famous for the Sterling slash, buying struggling legacy companies, stripping them of their assets, and selling the pieces for a massive profit. He didn't see the faces of the thousands of employees he laid off. To him, they were just red cells on a spreadsheet. Efficiency is the only morality in business, Arthur once told a Forbes reporter. But late at night, in that cavernous glass home, he'd find himself staring at the phone, realizing there wasn't a single person he could call just to talk. He had 3 ex-wives who all had ironclad non-disclosure agreements and a Rolodex full of friends who would step over his body to get his seat. 6 miles south, in a neighborhood the tourists avoid, lived the girl who would eventually break his fall. Maya Jenkins didn't have a penthouse. She had a bunk bed in a room she shared with her younger brother, Leo. Her view was a brick wall and a rusted fire escape. But Maya had something Arthur had lost decades ago, a purpose that wasn't tied to a bank account. Maya was a senior at PS 112, a school where the metal detectors worked better than the chemistry lab equipment. Her father, a former high school coach, had passed away 3 years earlier, leaving behind nothing but a mountain of medical debt and a worn-out basketball. But that ball was Maya's ticket out. Every morning, before the sun touched the skyscrapers, Maya was at the Cage, the legendary street court on West 4th. She didn't just play, she practiced with a mechanical, obsessive fury. She would shoot 500 three-pointers before breakfast. If she missed one, she started the set over. The local legends called her the Lebron of the streets. Scouts from Division I colleges were starting to whisper her name, but Maya knew the clock was ticking. Her mother was working 3 jobs, cleaning offices in buildings Arthur Sterling owned, and they were still 3 weeks behind on rent. The hoop doesn't care where you came from, Maya's father used to say. It only cares about the arc. While Maya was fighting for a future, Arthur's past was catching up to him. The Sterling Slash had recently claimed its latest victim, Vanguard Logistics. It was a move that netted Arthur a cool $2.1 billion, but it left the company's founder, Marcus Thorne, ruined. Thorne wasn't just a businessman. He was a man with nothing left to lose. For weeks, Arthur ignored the security briefings. He ignored the threatening emails. He felt invincible. He thought his wealth was a fortress. But on that fateful Tuesday, Arthur made a mistake. He felt a rare, suffocating wave of claustrophobia. He needed to feel the pavement. He needed to be normal. He slipped out of the side entrance of his office, wearing a plain gray hoodie, leaving his 2-man security detail behind. He walked for an hour, crossing into the lower side, where the lights were dimmer and the shadows were longer. He didn't realize he was being followed by a black SUV with tinted windows. He didn't realize that Marcus Thorne had put a $5 million bounty on his head, not to bring him back, but to make sure he never returned. As Arthur turned into a narrow alleyway to take a shortcut, he stepped over a puddle of oily water. He looked up and saw 3 men blocking the exit. He turned around, and the mouth of the alley was blocked by 2 more. For the first time in 20 years, Arthur Sterling's net worth was 0. In this alley, he was just meat. At that exact moment, just 50 yards away, Maya Jenkins was finishing her last set of drills. The rain was starting to fall, slicking the court. She tucked her ball under her arm and headed home, taking the same shortcut Arthur had just entered. She didn't know the man in the gray hoodie. She didn't know he was the reason her mother's wages had been frozen. She only saw 3 men beating a defenseless person into the dirt. And Maya Jenkins had never been good at walking away. If you were born into Maya's circumstances, struggling to survive in the shadow of billionaires, do you think you would have risked your life to save a stranger who looked like he belonged to the world that was crushing you? Let me know what you think. To the world, Arthur Sterling was a visionary, but to the thousands he left behind, he was a ghost haunting their bank accounts. Let's talk about how Arthur made his first billion. It wasn't through innovation or creating a product that changed the world. It was through a brutal mathematical process known in the industry as the Sterling Slash. Arthur's team at Sterling Global used high-frequency algorithms to identify companies that were fat. In Arthur's language, fat meant companies that still cared about things like employee pensions, community centers, and long-term stability. Take the case of Midwest Steel. In 2021, Arthur bought the company for $4.2 billion. Within 90 days, he had fired 3,000 workers, sold off the land to luxury developers, and moved the manufacturing offshore. He didn't just close the factory. He erased the town's heartbeat. When the mayor of that town pleaded with him on a recorded line, Arthur's response was cold enough to freeze blood. "I don't invest in people, Mr. Mayor. I invest in returns. If your people were an asset, they'd still have jobs." That one sentence became a viral sensation. To the elite, it was bold leadership. To everyone else, it was a declaration of war. Arthur didn't care. He spent that weekend on a $150 million yacht in the Amalfi Coast, celebrating a $600 million personal payday from the deal. He lived in a world where the consequences of his actions were things he only read about in the opinions section of the paper. While Arthur was sipping vintage Cristal, Maya Jenkins was measuring her life in ounces. Every ounce of energy, every ounce of sweat, had to count. You see, Maya wasn't just playing for fun. She was playing against a clock that was ticking louder every day. Her mother, Elena, was a woman whose hands were permanently cracked from the industrial bleach she used to scrub the floors of the very offices Arthur owned. Elena would come home at 2 a.m., her back screaming, and find Maya still awake, studying game tape on a cracked iPhone 8. "Maya, you need to sleep," Elena would whisper. "I'll sleep when you don't have to work on Sundays, Ma," Maya would reply. The cage on West 4th is where reputations go to die, but for Maya, it was where hers was forged in fire. To get respect there, you don't just need skill, you need the eye. The eye is the ability to see the court 3 seconds before the play happens. Maya didn't just see players, she saw physics. She knew exactly how much force a gust of wind would add to a ball. She knew the exact density of the backboard. 1 week before the alley encounter, a group of semi-pro players tried to humiliate her. They bet her $500, money she didn't have, that she couldn't hit 10 consecutive full-court shots. The crowd gathered. The cameras came out. Maya didn't blink. She took the ball, felt the grain of the leather, and breathed. 1. Swish. 5. Swish. 9. Swish. By the 10th shot, the park was silent. When the ball snapped through the net without touching the rim, the park erupted. She didn't celebrate. She just collected the $500, walked straight to the bodega, and paid off her mother's overdue grocery tab. That was Maya. Precision. Purpose. No wasted motion. But back in the high-rises, Marcus Thorne, the man Arthur had ruined, was watching those same streets. Thorne had lost his company, his wife had left him during the bankruptcy, and his son's college fund had vanished into Arthur's yacht. Thorne didn't want a lawsuit. He wanted the slash to feel what it was like to be discarded. He hired 3 men, former private security contractors who had been downsized by a Sterling-owned firm. The irony was poetic. Arthur's own cost-cutting measures had created the very monsters that were now hunting him. The night of the attack, the rain wasn't just a drizzle. It was a deluge. It washed away the smell of the city and turned the alleys into mirrors. Arthur felt the first hand on his shoulder. It wasn't a, "Hey, buddy." It was a grip of iron. "Mr. Sterling," a voice rasped. "You're a hard man to find without your dogs." Arthur tried to reach for his phone, but a fist collided with his jaw. The world spun. The $45 million view was gone. All he could see was the dirty water rising toward his face. He realized then that his billions couldn't buy a second of time or an ounce of mercy. He was on his knees, the iron pipe was raised, and the rain was turning red. Arthur Sterling, the man who owned the world, was about to die in the trash. But he didn't know that 50 feet away, a girl with a $20 basketball and a never-miss aim had just turned the corner. Arthur built his empire by cutting people out. Now, his life depended on someone he'd usually look right through. If you were Arthur in that moment, what would you be regretting most? The money you made or the people you stepped on to get it? Let me know in the comments. I am the world of wealth. 70 seconds is enough time to lose $1 million. In this alley, it was enough time to lose a soul. The first blow didn't just break Arthur's skin, it broke his reality. One moment he was the king of Wall Street, and the next, he was face down in a puddle that smelled of diesel and neglect. The lead attacker, a man with a jagged scar and a voice like grinding stones, knelt over him. "Thorne says hello," he whispered. He didn't reach for a wallet. He reached for a heavy-duty zip tie. This wasn't a robbery. It was a kidnapping destined to end in a shallow grave. But then the air changed. A rhythmic thump-thump echoed off the brick walls. Maya Jenkins was taking the long way home, her hoodie pulled low against the rain. She saw the shadows moving. Most people in this city have a PhD in minding their own business, but Maya saw the look in Arthur's eyes, the look of a man who had already accepted his death. She didn't scream. She didn't call for help. She calculated. She was 30 feet away. She had 1 basketball, 15 pounds of air pressure, and an arm that hadn't missed a free throw in 3 years. She took a breath, stepped into her shot, and launched the ball. Not at the hoop but at the temple of the man holding the iron pipe. Crack. The sound of leather hitting bone was sickeningly loud. The man dropped like a sack of stones. "Hey!" Maya shouted, her voice cutting through the rain like a blade. "Pick on someone who can actually fight back." The other two thugs froze. They looked at their fallen leader, then at the slim girl standing at the mouth of the alley. They laughed, a cruel, jagged sound. One of them pulled a switchblade. "You just made the last mistake of your life, kid," he spat. But they didn't know Maya. They didn't know about the thousands of hours she'd spent dodging defenders twice her size. As they rushed her, she moved like water. She used her second ball, the one she kept in her mesh bag, as a projectile, then followed up with a lightning-fast crossover that sent the second attacker stumbling into a stack of wooden pallets. Arthur watched, dazed, as this girl dismantled professional hitmen with nothing but a ball and sheer athleticism. It wasn't a fight. It was a performance. When the thugs finally scrambled back to their SUV, realizing the neighborhood was waking up, silence returned to the alley. Maya walked over to Arthur. She didn't offer a hand at first. She just looked at his $2,000 shoes, now ruined by sewer water. "You look like you belong in a skyscraper, not a gutter," she said, her voice dropping the bravado. "Can you stand?" Arthur tried, but his ribs screamed. He looked at Maya, really looked at her, and saw the nobody he had spent his career stepping on. "Why?" he wheezed. "Why did you help me?" Maya shrugged, picking up her scuffed basketball. "My dad taught me you don't let people get jumped. Doesn't matter if they're wearing a suit or rags. Human is human." Arthur didn't go to the hospital. He couldn't. If the board of directors saw him like this, the stock would plummet. He made a choice that would redefine his life. He asked Maya to take him to her home. The walk to the tenement housing was the longest journey of Arthur's life. He climbed 5 flights of stairs that smelled of cabbage and old floor wax. He sat on a plastic-covered sofa in a room that was smaller than his walk-in closet. As Maya's mother, Elena, patched his wounds with a basic first aid kit, Arthur looked around. He saw the Sterling Global logo on a crumpled eviction notice on the kitchen table. The realization hit him harder than the iron pipe. He was the villain in this girl's story. He was the one who had signed the order to restructure this entire block into luxury condos. He had saved millions of dollars by making this family homeless. For the first time in his life, Arthur Sterling felt the weight of his wealth. It wasn't a trophy. It was a debt. He looked at Maya, who was already back to practicing her ball handling in the tiny hallway, and he felt a strange, terrifying spark of something he hadn't felt in decades: admiration. The next morning, Arthur's world didn't go back to normal. Marcus Thorne was still out there. The board of directors was starting to ask questions about his disappearance. Arthur realized he couldn't go back to his penthouse. Not yet. He was being hunted, and his high-tech security had failed. He needed someone who knew the shadows. He needed someone the suit and tie world would never see coming. He looked at Maya and made her an offer that sounded like a joke. "I'll pay off your mother's debt. I'll buy this building and give it to the tenants. I'll put you in the best training camp in the country." Maya stopped her ball. "And what do I have to do?" Arthur's eyes were cold now but focused. "I need you to be my eyes where the cameras don't reach. I'm going to find the man who tried to kill me, and I'm going to take everything from him. But I can't do it from a boardroom. I need to do it from the streets." Maya stood at the crossroads. She could take the money and run, leaving the billionaire to his fate. Or she could enter a world of corporate shadow wars where a basketball was no longer a game. It was a weapon. At this point, Maya had to choose between option A, take the life-changing money and walk away, or option B, join forces with the man who was indirectly destroying her neighborhood to help him seek revenge. What would you have done? This decision would define everything that came next. Arthur Sterling had mastered the art of the hostile takeover, but he was about to learn that the most hostile territory on Earth isn't a boardroom. It's a city block that knows you don't belong. The deal was struck in a kitchen that smelled of pine sol and struggle. Maya Jenkins didn't shake Arthur's hand. She just bounced her ball once, a hard echoing thud against the linoleum. "If we do this," Maya said, her eyes boring into his, "you don't get to be the boss. Out there, you're just a guy who can't hold his own. You follow my lead, or you're a dead man walking." Arthur, a man who hadn't taken an order in 20 years, nodded. He had to. His GPS tracked phone was at the bottom of the East River. His bank accounts were being monitored by Thorne's hackers. For the first time, his signature was worthless, but his life was priceless. Airfirst's task was simple but terrifying. Move Arthur from the tenement to a dark house across town without being spotted by the SUV patrols Marcus Thorne had circling the blocks. Arthur looked at his reflection in Maya's cracked bathroom mirror. He was wearing a discarded oversized hoodie from a local thrift store and a pair of beat-up jeans. He looked like a shadow. "Walk like you're tired," Maya instructed. "Wealthy people walk like they're late for a meeting. People here walk like they've been on their feet for 12 hours. Slouch. Keep your head down." As they hit the street, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Every engine revving sounded like a hitman. Every siren felt like the end. Arthur felt a cold sweat prickling his neck. He realized that for Maya, this hypervigilance wasn't a mission. It was her Tuesday. As they navigated the back alleys, they passed a shuttered youth center. The sign out front was faded, but the Sterling Global logo was visible on the foreclosure notice. Maya stopped. She didn't say anything, she just looked at the padlock. "That was my dad's gym," she said quietly. "You closed it 6 months ago to save $40,000 a year in maintenance. That $40,000 is what you spend on a weekend in the Hamptons. To us, it was the only place kids could go to stay away from guys like the ones who jumped you." Arthur felt a hollow ache in his chest. He had made the decision in 30 seconds while eating a Wagyu steak. Seeing the rusted chains on the doors made the sterling slash feel like a physical wound. Suddenly, a black SUV with tinted windows turned the corner, crawling at 5 miles per hour. "Don't run," Maya hissed. "Just keep the rhythm." She started dribbling. Thump, thump, thump. She began a series of intricate between-the-legs moves, using her body to shield Arthur from the view of the car. She looked like just another kid showing off for a friend. The SUV slowed down. The window rolled down just an inch. Arthur held his breath, his heart hammering against his ribs like a caged bird. He saw the glint of a barrel. Not a gun, but a high-powered camera lens. They were scanning faces. Maya didn't miss a beat. She intentionally fumbled the ball, sending it rolling toward the SUV. She chased after it, her hoodie covering Arthur's silhouette perfectly as she bent down to retrieve it. She gave the driver a bored, annoyed look, the universal expression of a teenager being interrupted. The SUV sped off. As they reached the safe house, a basement apartment owned by Maya's cousin, Arthur sat on a crate, shaking. "You're not just a basketball player," Arthur whispered. "You're a ghost." "In this neighborhood, being invisible is a survival skill," Maya replied. She sat across from him, spinning the ball on her finger. "You spent your life building towers so everyone would look at you. I spent mine learning how to make sure nobody does." Over the next few hours, the dynamic shifted. Arthur began to see Maya's Lebron of the streets. Persona wasn't just about scoring points. It was about spatial awareness. She could map a room in seconds. She knew where the exits were, where the shadows pooled, and who in the crowd was a threat. He realized he didn't just need a bodyguard. He needed a partner. Arthur pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. A map of Thorne's known holdings. "Thorne thinks he's won because he has the money and the muscle," Arthur said, his voice regaining its edge. "But he's using my old playbook. He's predictable. He's loud." Arthur began to explain a counterattack. Not a physical one, but a financial assassination. He would use Maya to plant dead-drop devices near Thorne's servers. Places no security guard would check because they'd be looking for a man in a suit, not a girl with a basketball. "We're going to use your aim, Maya. Not to hit a person, but to hit a target. If you can throw a ball into a hoop from 50 feet, you can throw a signal jammer onto a third-story balcony." Maya looked at the map, then at the man she was supposed to despise. She saw the bruises on his face and the genuine fear in his eyes. For the first time, she didn't see a billionaire. She saw a human being who was finally waking up to the world he had helped break. One condition, Maya said. When this is over and you get your empire back. The sterling slashed eyes. You rebuild the gym. You rebuild the block. Arthur looked at his hands. The hands that had signed away thousands of lives. I'm not sure I can go back to being the man I was, Maya. Even if I wanted to. The plan was set. The billionaire and the street legend were no longer just survivor and savior. They were a team. But as they prepared for their first strike against Thorn, a shadow moved in the hallway. Someone had followed them. And this time, they weren't looking for a photo. Arthur is promising to change his entire business philosophy. But can a man who built a kingdom on greed truly find redemption in the shadows? If you were Maya, would you trust his word, or is he just saying what he needs to stay alive? Drop your theories in the comments. I want to know if you think Arthur is playing her. The most dangerous weapon in the world isn't a billion-dollar missile. It's a girl with nothing to lose and a man with everything to prove. Before they could strike Marcus Thorn, Arthur had to stop being Arthur. For 48 hours, the basement of the safe house became a billionaire boot camp. Maya forced him to shed every habit of the elite. Stop checking your wrist, she snapped when he looked for a watch that wasn't there. Time doesn't belong to you anymore. You're on the city's clock now. She taught him the urban camouflage. She showed him how to blend into a crowd of commuters, how to use the reflection of a bodega window to see who was behind him, and most importantly, how to stay silent. Arthur, who was used to his voice being the most important sound in any room, found the silence deafening. But he was a fast learner. You don't build $100 billion company without being a predator. He began to apply his analytical mind to the streets. He started seeing the patterns in the traffic, the timing of the subway doors, and the gaps in the private security patrols Thorn had hired to scour the district. Their target was Thorn's command center, a fortified black site disguised as a high-end data storage facility in Long Island City. Thorn was using it to intercept Sterling Global's encrypted communications, slowly siphoning Arthur's assets into offshore accounts. If I can get this device within 10 feet of their main satellite uplink, Arthur explained, holding a small black puck-shaped jammer, I can freeze his access. He'll be locked out of my money, and he'll have to come out of hiding to fix it. The problem. The uplink was on a rooftop terrace, surrounded by a 15-foot electrified fence and motion sensor cameras. No human could get close without being shredded. I can't get inside, Maya said, looking at the blueprints. But I don't need to be inside to score. The night of the mission, the wind was whipping off the East River. Maya stood on the roof of a neighboring tenement, 3 stories lower than the target. The gap was 60 feet of open air, swirling with crosswinds. Arthur watched her. She was holding a modified basketball, the interior hollowed out to hold the jammer, weighted perfectly to mimic a standard Spalding. Maya, Arthur whispered. If you miss, the alarm goes off. They'll be on us in seconds. We won't make it to the stairs. Maya didn't look at him. She was breathing in the rhythm of the city. I've been shooting into crates from fire escapes since I was 6, Arthur. This isn't a mission. It's just a 3-pointer with higher stakes. Maya stepped to the edge of the roof. Below them, the world was a blur of headlights and rain. She felt the wind shift. She waited for the exact moment the security camera panned away. She didn't just throw it. She launched it with a high, arching backspin that fought the wind. The ball soared through the dark, a silent shadow against the moon. It cleared the electrified fence by an inch. It didn't hit the ground. It landed perfectly in a decorative planter box right beneath the satellite array. Click. On Arthur's handheld monitor, the red bars turned green. We're in, he breathed. Thorn is blind. Thorn is blind. He didn't see the kids on bicycles circling the block. He didn't see the accidental traffic jam being created by local delivery drivers 2 blocks away, cutting off his reinforcements. The seeds of redemption were being planted in the dark. Arthur began to coordinate a reverse slash. He used Maya's knowledge of the city's blind spots to position the local kids as scouts. As the sun began to peek over the horizon, Arthur turned to Maya. If we make it through this, The first thing I do isn't getting my money back. It's reopening your father's gym. And I want you to run it. Maya finally smiled, a small, tired but genuine flick of the lips. Focus on the play, Arthur. We haven't hit the buzzer beater yet. The stage was set. Thorne was coming to the neighborhood to finish the job personally, thinking he was walking into a trap for a broken billionaire. He didn't realize he was walking into the most calculated, high-stakes game of streetball ever played. We're at the midpoint of this incredible story. If you're still here, I genuinely appreciate you. What's kept you engaged so far? Is it the action, or the change you're seeing in Arthur? Let me know in the comments. The most dangerous man in the room isn't the one with the most money. It's the one who has lost everything and realized he didn't need it anyway. The shift didn't happen in a skyscraper. It happened in the back of a community center basement, lit by a single flickering bulb. Arthur Sterling sat before a row of burner phones and a laptop with a cracked screen. Beside him, Maya was using her street network, a group of delivery riders and local gamers, to track Marcus Thorne's every move. Arthur realized that Thorne was making the classic mistake of the arrogant. He was looking up for his enemies, never imagining that the man he destroyed was currently living on $15 a day street food. He's moving the liquidity at midnight, Arthur whispered, his eyes scanning lines of code. He thinks my absence is his permission. But he forgot that I wrote the encryption he's trying to break. During these weeks of hiding, Arthur's transformation was physical and spiritual. The $2,000 haircuts were replaced by a buzz cut from a local barber who didn't know his name. The coldness in his eyes was replaced by a sharp, humble hunger. He spent his nights not just plotting revenge, but learning. He sat with Elena, Maya's mother, and listened to her talk about the families affected by his Sterling slash. For every hour he spent hacking Thorne's accounts, he spent 2 hours drafting a new corporate charter. He didn't just want his money back. He wanted to dismantle the version of himself that had earned it. He started by using his remaining hidden offshore rainy day fund, a mere $200,000 peanuts in his old world, to quietly stop the evictions in Maya's block through an anonymous shell company. You're different, Maya said one night, watching him navigate a complex financial loophole. The first day I met you, you smelled like money and fear. Now you just smell like the neighborhood. Arthur looked at his hands, calloused from helping Maya's brother move furniture out of the line of fire. I spent my life building walls, Maya. I didn't realize I was just building my own prison. Then came the first win. Arthur didn't go to the SEC. He went to the people. He leaked a series of documents to a local investigative journalist. Not about his own disappearance, but about Thorne's illegal dumping of toxic assets into public pension funds. The Sterling slash was being used as a weapon against the man who stole it. Thorne's stock began to wobble. The board, those vultures who had abandoned Arthur, began to panic. They needed a savior. And Arthur was preparing to give them one, but not the one they expected. While Arthur rebuilt his mind, Maya was thriving in a way she never thought possible. With Arthur's strategic coaching, she wasn't just playing basketball. She was playing the system. He taught her how to negotiate her image rights, how to speak to the scouts who were now swarming the cage, and how to manage the pressure of being a local hero. She wasn't just the Lebron of the streets anymore. She was becoming a brand. She led her school team to a state championship, but more importantly, she mentored the younger kids, teaching them the shadow movement skills she used to save Arthur. Her brother, Leo, who had once been failing his classes, was now Arthur's IT assistant, learning coding from a man who had pioneered the tech industry. By week 12, the trap was set. Marcus Thorne had called a victory gala to celebrate his official takeover of Sterling Global. He thought Arthur was dead or rotting in a gutter. He thought the girl in the hoodie was a ghost of a bad night. But Arthur was at his peak. He wasn't just wealthy, he was wise. He had a network of nobodies that spanned the entire city. Tonight, Arthur said, adjusting his new simple black suit, bought from a local tailor, not a designer. Thorne thinks he's crowning a king. He doesn't realize he's walking onto a court where he doesn't know the rules. Maya stood beside him, her basketball in her bag, her eyes reflecting the neon lights of the city. Ready to finish the game, Arthur? The motorcade was moving. The gala was starting. The most powerful people in New York were raising their glasses to a liar. They had no idea that a billionaire and a street legend were about to walk through the front door. At this point, Arthur has transformed into someone completely different. From a man who valued profit over people, to a man who risked everything for a family that wasn't his. Do you think people can truly change at their core, or is Arthur just adapting to survive? This is important for the final revelation coming next. The most expensive suit in the world can't hide a guilty conscience, and tonight, the bill has finally come due. The grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel was a sea of black ties, diamond necklaces, and fake smiles. Marcus Thorne stood at the center of it all, glass of vintage Krug in hand. He had done it. He had successfully merged his firm with Sterling Global, officially erasing Arthur Sterling from the history books. The press was there. The board was there. Even the mayor had made an appearance. Thorne was basking in the glow of a $200 billion victory, unaware that the building's security system, the very one he thought he controlled, had been quietly bypassed 30 minutes ago. Arthur stood in the service hallway, adjusting his cuffs. He wasn't wearing his usual $10,000 bespoke suit. He was wearing a simple, sharp charcoal blazer he'd bought from a shop in Maya's neighborhood. Beside him stood Maya. She wore a sleek, dark jumpsuit, her hair braided tight. She didn't look like a street kid anymore. She looked like the future. The music hummed as Thorne stepped onto the podium to give his victory speech. Arthur Sterling was a man of the past, Thorne began, his voice amplified by the massive sound system. He didn't understand the new world. He lacked vision. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. The room went silent. It wasn't just the fact that a dead man was walking. It was the way he walked. Gone was the arrogant, stiff posture of the iron billionaire. Arthur moved with a new, fluid confidence. The walk of someone who had survived the streets and come back stronger. Arthur didn't run. He didn't shout. He walked down the center aisle, Maya flanking him on the left, and 3 of the league's players from the neighborhood, now dressed as security, flanking him on the right. Thorne's face went from triumph to a sickly pale gray. The glass in his hand trembled. Arthur, he choked out. That's impossible. You're right about one thing, Marcus, Arthur said, his voice calm, projecting even without a microphone. The old Arthur Sterling is gone. You killed him in that alley. But you forgot one thing about the people you step on. They eventually learn how to stand back up. Thorne tried to signal his security, but they didn't move. Instead, the massive digital screens behind the podium, meant to show the new company logo, flickered. They began to play a loop of the footage Maya had helped Arthur secure. Thorne meeting with Julian Vane, the transfer of illegal funds, and the clear orders given to the hitmen. It wasn't just a corporate takeover. It was a criminal conspiracy. I didn't just come here to take my company back, Arthur said, stepping onto the stage. I came here to introduce the new board. He gestured to the balcony. There stood the community leaders from the Bronx, the small business owners Thorne had tried to crush, and Elena, Maya's mother. And I want you to meet the person who actually runs this city, Arthur added, looking at Maya. At that moment, the Lebron of the streets stepped forward. She didn't say a word. She just held up a tablet, the master key to the Sterling Global servers. While Thorne was talking, Maya had executed a reverse slash. Every cent Thorne had stolen had been redirected into a community trust fund. Thorne lunged for Arthur, a final desperate act of a cornered animal. But he never reached him. Maya didn't even have to use her hands. She simply stepped into his path with the same defensive footwork that made her a legend in the cage. Thorne tripped, falling flat on the stage he thought he owned. The flashbulbs of the paparazzi went off like a firing squad. 2 federal agents, who had been waiting in the wings based on the evidence Arthur had leaked, stepped forward and clicked the handcuffs onto Thorne's wrists. Arthur looked at the man who had tried to murder him. A month ago, he would have wanted Thorne to suffer. He would have wanted to see him rot. But as the agents led Thorne away, Arthur felt nothing but a profound sense of peace. He realized that his revenge wasn't Thorne's downfall. His revenge was the fact that he was standing there, breathing, surrounded by people who actually cared if he lived or died. He had won not by being the biggest predator, but by refusing to be a predator at all. Maya walked over to him, leaning against the podium. "Game over, Arthur." Arthur looked at the crowd, the stunned billionaires and the hopeful faces from the neighborhood. He looked at Maya, the girl who had changed the arc of his life with a single throw. "No," Arthur smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "The game is just starting. And this time we're playing for the right team." The room erupted into a chaos of questions and cheering. Arthur didn't stay for the party. He walked out the front door through the gauntlet of cameras and headed toward the one place he finally felt at home, the court on West 4th. The confrontation is over. Arthur reclaimed his life, but he did it by empowering others rather than just crushing his enemy. Do you feel satisfied with how this played out? Or would you have wanted Arthur to be more vindictive? There's no wrong answer here. Share your thoughts in the comments. The dust has finally settled on the most unlikely alliance in New York history, proving that while money can build a tower, only character can keep you from falling. For Marcus Thorne, the fall was as public as it was pathetic. The man who tried to play God found himself in a 6x9 cell in a federal penitentiary, awaiting trial for racketeering, attempted murder, and fraud. But the real punishment wasn't the bars. It was the silence. The friends who cheered his takeover vanished overnight. The board members who toasted his vision were the first to testify against him to save their own skins. His assets were frozen, his reputation turned to ash, and the name Thorne became a cautionary tale whispered in the elevators of Wall Street. Marcus Thorne didn't lose his life that night at the gala. He lost his relevance. And in his world, that's a fate much worse than death. Arthur Sterling did something the financial world thought was impossible. He came back, but he didn't return to the same office. He liquidated the Sterling Global headquarters and moved the entire operation to a refurbished industrial building in the heart of the Bronx. He didn't call it a hedge fund anymore. He called it the Impact Trust. Instead of the Sterling Slash, he pioneered the Sterling Seed. He began investing in the very neighborhoods he once overlooked, proving that social responsibility wasn't just good for the soul, it was incredibly profitable. Under his leadership, the trust became the top-performing fund in the city, but its success was measured in more than just decimals. It was measured in the thousands of small businesses that stayed open and the affordable housing projects that actually felt like homes. Arthur no longer wakes up at 4:30 a.m. to look at a marble-framed mirror. He wakes up to the sound of the city. He's often seen at the local bodega, grabbing a coffee and talking to the neighbors. He's not Mr. Sterling anymore. He's just Arthur. "I used to think my net worth was my scoreboard," Arthur recently said in a rare interview. "Now I realize it was just a cage. Maya didn't save me from 3 thugs. She saved me from a life of being a well-dressed ghost." And what of the girl who started it all? Maya Jenkins didn't just go to college. She changed the game. She accepted a full-ride scholarship to Duke, but not before she saw the Jenkins Sterling Community Center open its doors on West 4th. The center isn't just a gym. It's a tech hub, a legal clinic, and a sanctuary. Maya's brother, Leo, is the head of the center's youth coding initiative. He doesn't look at the skyscrapers with fear anymore. He looks at them as things he can build. He sees Arthur not as a billionaire benefactor, but as a student who finally graduated from the school of the streets. Maya looks back at the night in the alley with a wisdom that far exceeds her years. She doesn't see it as a moment of luck. She sees it as the moment the universe forced a collision between 2 people who needed each other's strengths. "Arthur had the map, but I had the compass," Maya often tells the kids at the center. Success isn't about reaching the top alone. It's about making sure the people at the bottom have a ladder. If you walk down West 4th today, you'll see a man in a simple gray hoodie sitting on the bleachers. He's watching a girl with a basketball dismantle a defense with a series of lightning-fast crossovers. He isn't checking a watch. He isn't taking a call. He's cheering. The iron billionaire is gone. In his place is a man who finally understands that the most valuable asset on his balance sheet is the friendship of a girl who never misses her shot. Marcus Thorne sits in a gray room, staring at a concrete wall, wondering where he went wrong. Arthur Sterling sits in the sun, watching the next generation of Ace Jenkins's rise, knowing he finally did something right. 2 lives, 2 paths, and 1 single moment in an alley that changed the destiny of a city. The story of the billionaire and the Lebron of the streets is a reminder that the greatest investment you can ever make is in a human being. Looking at where everyone ended up, do you believe in karma? Or is this just the natural consequence of choices? I want to hear what you think. Does everyone eventually get what they deserve, or do we have to fight to make justice happen? Drop your thoughts in the comments. In the end, we aren't remembered for the empires we build, but for the people we chose to protect when we had nothing left to give. This journey, from a dark alley to the heights of redemption, teaches us a hard truth. Wealth is a terrible shield, but character is an unbreakable sword. We saw Arthur Sterling, a man who thought $100 billion made him a god, find his salvation in a 14-year-old girl with a worn-out basketball. It reminds us that true success isn't about the absence of struggle. It's about the excellence you maintain during the struggle. Justice wasn't served when Arthur took his money back. It was served when he decided that money would never again be the most important thing about him. Resilience isn't just surviving. It's refusing to let the world turn you as cold as the people who hurt you. If you're watching this and you feel like you're in that alley right now, overwhelmed, outnumbered, and outmatched, remember Maya Jenkins. She didn't have a weapon, a trust fund, or a degree. She had a skill she'd practiced 10,000 times and the courage to use it for someone else. Your worth isn't determined by your circumstances. It's determined by your response to them. Arthur views his journey now not as a tragedy, but as a necessary shattering. He often tells Maya that his downfall was the greatest gift Marcus Thorne ever gave him. It stripped away the ego, the isolation, and the delusion of invincibility. If I had stayed in that penthouse, Arthur reflects, I would have died a rich man, but I would have died a failure. True success is being able to walk down any street in this city and have people look you in the eye with respect, not fear. His advice to others is simple. Invest in people before you invest in products. A business can be stolen. A reputation can be smeared. But the loyalty you earn by doing the right thing, that is the only currency that never devalues. The legacy of this story lives on in the next generation. Maya and Leo aren't just breaking generational patterns. They are rewriting the manual for what a leader looks like. The hardship didn't break them, it tempered them. Because of that alley, Leo will never see technology as just code, but as a tool for equity. Maya will never see basketball as just a game, but as a proof of discipline. They are entering adulthood with a sense of peace that Arthur took 50 years to find. They are the living proof that a single moment of courage can change the trajectory of an entire family line. As for Marcus Thorne, his name is rarely mentioned in Arthur's house. There is no bitterness there, no celebration of his misery. Bitterness is a chain, and Arthur is finally free. He understands now that Thorne was simply a man who made his choices, and those choices built his prison long before the handcuffs clicked. When you measure your life by what you can take, you eventually find yourself in a world where everyone is trying to take from you. Arthur doesn't hate Thorne. He pities him. Because Thorne still thinks the game is about the money, while Arthur knows it's about the soul. So, what can we take away from this 3-hour journey? First, never underestimate the nobody in the room. The person you think has the least to offer might be the one holding the key to your survival. Second, integrity is a long-term investment. It might feel like the villains are winning in the short term, but they are building on sand. Finally, learn to love yourself through the transformation. Arthur had to lose the iron billionaire to find the human being. Sometimes you have to let your old self die to give the person you're meant to be a chance to breathe. The story of the billionaire and the girl is over, but your story is still being written. What choice will you make when the pressure is on? Looking at where everyone ended up, do you believe in karma? Or is this just the natural consequence of choices? I want to hear what you think in the comments below. Thank you for staying with me through this incredible 3-hour journey. Stories like Arthur and Maya's remind us that no matter how dark the alley, there is always a way out if we have the courage to stand together. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think differently about the world, please consider subscribing. This video was a labor of love. taking over 85 hours of collective work to bring to life. Your support is the only reason I can keep telling these deep dive stories of human resilience. Before you go, I've linked a video on the screen right now about another incredible story of a fall from grace that led to an even bigger comeback. You won't want to miss that one. Click it now, and I'll see you over there. Until next time, remember, keep your head up and never miss your shot. In the grand theater of life, the most powerful stories aren't written in ink. They're forged in the fire of our hardest moments. We've traveled a long road today. We started in a rain-slicked alley where a man worth $100 billion was seconds away from becoming a ghost. We saw the iron billionaire, Arthur Sterling, lose everything. His company, his status, and his very identity. But we also saw the rise of Maya, the ace Jenkins. She didn't have a portfolio or a private jet. She had a basketball and a heart that refused to let a stranger suffer. The transformation we witnessed wasn't just about Arthur getting his money back. It was about a man learning to see the world he had spent decades ignoring. It was about a girl from the Bronx teaching a titan of industry that the most valuable asset isn't a stock, it's a soul. From the Sterling Slash to the Impact Trust, this was the story of a predator becoming a protector. Think back to the moment in the basement where Arthur had to choose between his ego and Maya's family. Think about the shot Maya took on that rooftop, with the wind howling and the stakes higher than any championship game. These weren't just plot points. They were the moments where character eclipsed circumstance. Why does this story matter? Because at some point, we all find ourselves in an alley. We all face a Marcus Thorne, a person or a situation that tries to strip us of our dignity. This story is significant because it proves that excellence is the ultimate form of rebellion. Arthur didn't win through cruelty. He won through growth. Maya didn't win by leaving her neighborhood. She won by lifting it up with her. The universal theme here is simple yet profound. You don't need to be a billionaire to change a life, and you don't need to be a victim of your past to own your future. What I want you to take away from this is that your current struggle is not your conclusion. It is your training ground. Whether you're working 3 jobs like Elena or fighting to rebuild a shattered reputation like Arthur, your value is not a number in a bank account. Circumstances do not define your worth. Your resilience does. If you stay focused, if you keep practicing your shot when no one is watching, the momentum will eventually shift. When it does, remember the people who were with you in the shadows. If this story moved you, inspired you, or taught you something valuable about resilience and success, please leave a like and share your biggest takeaway in the comments. I read every single one, and your insights make this community special. Did Arthur's redemption feel earned to you? Let's talk about it below. Remember, you are not defined by what others think of you. You are defined by how you respond when life tests you. Arthur and Maya proved that the best response to cruelty isn't revenge. It's building a life so beautiful that your critics become irrelevant. Until next time, stay strong, stay focused, and never let anyone convince you that you're nothing. You're everything you choose to become.